Predict, pick, and prevail in your fantasy football leagues with Nick Giacobbe and Nick Cap. From breakouts to busts, superstars to sleepers, these are the guys that will help you achieve fantasy glory. This is the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast.
Welcome everybody to Season 2, Episode 72 of the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast, where we give you our predictions, our picks, with the hopes that we help you prevail throughout the first round of the 2022 Fantasy Playoffs and the rest of your 2022 Fantasy Playoffs. I'm your host, Nick Giacobbe. Joining me is Nick Cap. Nick, it's Friday. We're going into Week 15. We got some Saturday games. We got a bunch of Sunday games. We watched that Seahawks game last night, and they probably got obliterated. It's about to start, actually, as we're recording, and I'm not really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, you guys know more than we do about this game, but it's a big week. It's playoff week. Big time.
It is. A lot to talk about. We have some news to talk about, some players that are out, some players that are in. We have our all boom and all bust teams, a lot of players that are either going to help or hurt your fantasy playoffs. And then we're going to end the show with flex on one player from each team that you can play in your flex spot. And we'll tell you which one we'd rather play. So if this is your first time listening to us, thank you so much. We do the show on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, and a live show on Sundays. During our Friday show, which is today's, like I said, we do the all boom, all bust, flex on them, and a new segment going into that week with injury updates. We do a Sunday show, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. YouTube and Facebook is PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast. Twitter is PrimeTimeFFPod. The Sunday show going forward is actually going to be a Saturday show starting next week. So we're still live this Sunday for the first round of the fantasy playoffs. Then Christmas Eve will be live instead of Christmas Day because Christmas Eve is most of the games, so that's the time to go live and to answer your fantasy football questions. So join us this Sunday, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube for that. You can find the show on all audio streaming platforms, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Anchor. If you're on iTunes or Spotify, please give us that 5-star rating and review. It is appreciated. If you'd rather watch and listen to the show, go to our YouTube channel, PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast. Hit the subscribe button. Drop a like on any video that you're watching. If you're watching this video, drop a like on it and share those links with your friends and league mates. Keep connecting and interacting with us on social media, PrimeTimeFFPod on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. Facebook and YouTube is PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast. With that said, we're about to get into the show, and if you see me looking that way, my Seahawks are on the television, so there you go. Okay, news and injury updates. We only have one bit of news, I would say, is that Dallas Goedert with a shoulder injury. He's not officially off the IR, but he's eligible to come off the IR and play this Sunday against the Chicago Bears. He did tell reporters on Thursday that it's heading in the right direction to play Sunday. Nick, if he does end up playing Sunday, are you starting him against the Bears?
Look, Goedert's been I think he's been the third best tight end for fantasy football outside of the injury. He's been better than Mark Andrews, in my opinion, and Zach Ertz will probably be the number 2 on the year behind Kelsey. But the fact of the matter is he's coming off an injury that's sidelined him for a while on the IR, and the Chicago Bears, I think, are a top 5 team against the tight end.
They're number 4. I just looked. So he's actually has a tough matchup to come back from it. Even if the Bears defense isn't good at everything, they're good against tight ends.
So I typically, if it were an average tight end, I would say don't go for a tough matchup off the injury. But it's Dallas freaking Goedert. He's been, in my opinion, as I just said, the second or third best tight end in football on the season without the injury. So for that reason alone and the high upside, the Eagles have been scoring way too many points. There's so much touchdown upside for him every week that he's out on that field. Like, the Eagles are retooling and getting another weapon. I would put him out there if you can. I know it's a tougher matchup, but I'd trust your stars, and Dallas Goedert's been a freaking star this year. Sorry, Nick is yelling at Russ.
Russ knows that there's food around, and he's yelping very, very loudly, and that's not allowed in this house. So he did get yelled at. I was on mute, so he didn't hear it, but he did get yelled at. So anyway, let's move on to the injury part of the segment. Players that did not practice on Thursday and Wednesday. Lamar Jackson with a knee injury has already been ruled out for the Saturday game, so Tyler Huntley's going to start. Jeff Wilson with a hip injury is questionable on Saturday, but he didn't practice both days. I don't think there's a practice tomorrow, so my guess is he will be out for Raheem Mostert. Treylon Burks with the concussion didn't practice. I'm assuming he won't clear concussion protocol. Ramondre Stevenson with the ankle hasn't practiced back-to-back days, so Damian Harris could be a guy you want to go pick up probably right now. Chase Claypool with a knee injury hasn't practiced back-to-back days. Pat Freiermuth with a foot injury hasn't practiced back-to-back days. He did tell reporters on Wednesday that he plans to play, but we've seen this before with players where they say they plan to play and then they don't. So I would trust the practice report. Deontay Johnson's an interesting situation because last week he practiced Wednesday, Didn't practice Thursday with the hip injury. Then I think he practiced Friday or didn't practice Friday, but ended up playing. This week it's trending in the same direction. So just watch the reports coming out on Friday and Saturday because he practiced Wednesday, didn't practice Thursday. It could just be a rest day. Cortland Sutton with the hamstring injury has not practiced back-to-back days. I'm assuming he's out. Marquise Brown and David Montgomery both with illnesses. Just monitor that. They should be fine. And Jacoby Myers, the concussion, hasn't practiced back-to-back days. I think he's probably going to be out. Seems like a bad concussion. All right, Nick. So who are you kind of worried about off this list, and how do fantasy managers kind of handle that going into the first round of the fantasy playoffs?
I think for the most part, every single player on this list is going to miss the week outside of Freiermuth and Deontay Johnson. Montgomery and Hollywood, I think they have a chance to play depending on how bad the illness is. But for the rest of them, I mean, I'm very concerned. I don't think any of them are going to be out there. Or if I didn't, if I do think they'll be out there, like Chase Claypool, I don't think they're startable anyway. So, I mean, it is what it is. Most of these guys probably aren't on playoff teams because of the injuries, and none of them have been superstars outside of Ramondre Stevenson. And I do think Damian Harris has to be added. They also have another running back. I think his name's Pierre Strong. I think he should be rostered.
I think so, yeah. Yep. All right, limited practices. Amari Cooper with a hip injury. Kevin Stefanski said he liked what he saw from practice on Thursday. He's good to go, and he will play on Saturday. Tyler Huntley cleared concussion protocol. And then Coach Harbaugh did not want to comment any more about his injuries. And he's been really weird with the Tyler Huntley injury this entire week. I don't know if you've caught a couple of the clips of him or what he said. It's been kind of odd. Yep. Brandon Cooks with a calf injury, reports say he's not expected to play. I wonder if this is not just an injury, but a disciplinary kind of thing. Because he has practiced back-to-back days, but then reports are saying he's not going to play. So it's interesting. Brian Robinson with a quad injury. Mike White with the ribs. He said to the media, no doubt in my mind I'll play. Not sure how long he's going to play for, but he is going to play, seems like. Tyler Boyd with the finger. He told reporters he will make it work. So we don't even know what finger it is. At least I haven't seen it, but he says he's going to make it work. So there you go. T. Higgins with the hamstring injury. Kenny Pickett with the concussion. He's still in concussion protocol. And I believe that Mitch Trubisky and Mason Rudolph have been splitting first team reps this week. So I don't think that Pickett plays. Trevor Lawrence with the toe, and Antonio Gibson, I forget his injury, but he was also limited. Full practice / off the injury report. Saquon Barkley with the neck. Brian Dable said he has no restrictions. Ryan Tannehill with the ankle. Justin Fields with an illness. Najee Harris with the hip, and DJ Moore with the ankle. I don't know if you want to comment on any of those players at all, but, those are your limited and full players.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is.
All right, moving on to our all-boom team for Week 15. Players that me and Nick think could boom in your first round of your fantasy playoffs. So, Nick, we got a quarterback here, with Lamar and Kyler out. This is a quarterback that I don't know if he's owned in over 50% of leagues at this point, but he wasn't as of a week ago. So, why do you believe that Mike White should be the all-boom quarterback this week?
Mike freaking White, averaging over 300 passing yards a game in all three of his starts, is averaging 18 fantasy points per game. He hasn't been a monster for fantasy football, but he has been very solid over the last 3 weeks. And he gets the Detroit Lions, who have allowed the most points to the quarterback position over the entire season. Mike White in that Jets offense gets yards. The Lions are not going to stop that. The one issue that they've had all year has been finding the end zone. But guess what? The Lions allowed the most points per game across the entire NFL this season. So you have a offense with a player that's getting the ball down the field, has had red zone struggles, and is now going up against a team that allows a lot of points to your opposition. It's a perfect recipe for success. So many of the quarterbacks are dinged up these past couple weeks. Lamar, Kyler, of course, we just spoke about. And Mike White's he hasn't been on a tear, but I mean, he's been pretty freaking solid for football. He's been solid for fantasy football. In the 2 games, not against Buffalo, he's thrown over 315 yards and 3 touchdowns. So he's been too dominant to bench him, and now he has his best matchup of his entire career. I think also there's another stat. In his 5 starts that he's played over the last 2 years, he's finished as a top 7 quarterback in 4 of them. So you're talking about somebody that hasn't just been consistent for football, but it's been top heavy. Nick and I think last episode or 2 episodes ago on the waiver wire episode, we went through all the quarterbacks in the top 15 that we would place over Mike White for the duration of the season. And there were 7 guys above him. Kyler Murray was one, Lamar Jackson was the other. So it was 2 of them. So that would put 5 quarterbacks that we would rank higher than Mike White for this playoff run. I think you need to lock him in. I am a little concerned about Zach Wilson being the backup, but based off the report I'm hearing out of camp, it's more so that Zach Wilson puts him in a better place to succeed than Joe Flacco. And if Mike White gets folded like a lawn chair again, like he did against the Buffalo Bills, where he has to miss some reps, that's where Zach's role will be. But so long as he avoids injury, he's going to be the quarterback and he's going to put up the yards you need. Comes down if he could score in the end zone. And even if he doesn't, just 2 weeks ago, he put up 370 yards and gave you 18 fantasy points. So I'm not too worried about that.
All right. Yeah. The Zach Wilson thing is kind of what worries me. And I really was going to play Mike White. I was trusting Nick. I was going to play Mike White. And then it's just like, I can't do it. I can't. I have Burrow and I can't do it. So I am going to start Joe Burrow. Nick, did I let you know that I am going to be going to that game on Sunday? I don't know if I let you know yet.
No, I do not officially. Now I officially.
Now you officially know, yeah. So I'm going to be at the Bucs game on Sunday. I get to see Brady play, which is pretty.
You're going to
cool.
be screaming at Shiesty depending on if he's doing well or not.
Oh, yeah. Burrow's going to hear from me. He better play well for this dynasty team. But here's the good thing about being at a football game. I can't be obsessed with checking my fantasy score. So like if I lose, at least I was at a football game that day. And I'm probably going to go 0 for 3. I'm not confident at all on my teams. Because once you hear the all bust team today, it is basically my fantasy teams. All right. Moving on to the running backs. I'm going to speak about Isaiah Pacheco. And Nick, I know you're a little bit higher in McKinnon, so I want to give you an opportunity to make a case for McKinnon here. But so on the graphic, if you want to put Chiefs running backs, I know you really like McKinnon. I like Pacheco. So if you want,
I like Pacheco better for this week.
You do? Okay, so then we could both agree on Pacheco. Then I know you did say McKinnon. I think you said a must play or something. There's Geno out of the pocket, and he almost threw a pick that dropped out of 57's hands. Good job, Geno. This is going to be a mess. Anyway, Texans have given up the most fantasy points to running backs. Every week a player faces the Texans. We pretty much put them on the all-boom team. But Pacheco, he has 4 straight weeks over double-digit fantasy points. I think he has 2 over 15 and then 2 over 10, something like that. In those 4 weeks, he also has over 65 rushing yards and I believe 2 or 3 touchdowns. Should also be a really good game script. I think the Chiefs are going to go up a good chunk of points. Gives a lot of opportunities for the rookie to run the ball and to continue to establish himself as the downhill runner that he is for the Kansas City Chiefs. So do you want to add anything to Pacheco? If you want to add a point for McKinnon, I want to give you the floor at the moment.
Yeah, I like McKinnon as well on the rest of the year. But like Nick said with the game script, McKinnon got his points from 117 receiving yards and touchdowns in the passing game. So as effective, I think McKinnon can be, and I think he needs to be on all rosters for that monster blow-up game. This is a game where Miami went up 30-0 at the half against them. There's no reason Kansas City can't do the same exact thing. And then the only reason I think Pacheco might not succeed is if they pull him out at halftime because they're up by so much.
I don't think they will because they were up like 20 points against Denver. They didn't pull any of their starters, and then Denver almost came back. So I think they'd have to be up a lot of points for them to pull starters.
We'll see. Yeah.
All right, Nick, our next all-boom running back is one of your favorites. I want you to speak about him because you said you wanted him on this team. You told me that like on Tuesday. You told me 2 players. So I'm going to give you those 2 players.
Thank you. I have Miles Sanders here. The Bears have given up the 4th most points to the running back position, and as much as I didn't like Miles Sanders going into the year, he has proved me wrong, and I'm going to hop on the train now. I know I'm a little late to hop on. The train probably left the station before.
The train left the station. Nick had to get a ticket off a StubHub for that one.
Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. But he's been really good over the last 3 games. He has 2 over 25. And this game should call for a very positive game script. The Eagles have been obliterating teams the last few weeks. It hasn't even been close, and they're going to have no problem running the ball, running up the score. On top of that, the Bears have allowed 16 touchdowns to our running backs over the course of the season, and over the last 3 games, Miles Sanders has 5. So as long as he's putting up those types of numbers, he's going to absolutely dominate, and the Bears have been worse since the trade deadline, since trading 2 defensive studs. So I think Miles Sanders absolutely has a chance to blow up in this game. Hopefully not blow up in your face and hopefully blow up for your fantasy team. But I didn't like him all year, and he turned me. I'm a changed man now, Miles Sanders.
Nick has been turned to the dark side.
I will take you in the running back dead zone in at least 1 league next year.
God, there you go. All right. Gonna move on to wide receivers. He's a receiver that I love this week because I love picking on the Tennessee Titans defense. First off, if you listen to the show, you know I just don't like the Titans. Can't really tell you why. Vrabel's actually a great coach. They're just boring. I think it's because they're boring. I think that's why I don't like them. They're just
I don't like
boring.
Derrick Henry. That's why
I don't ever want to see the Titans on my red zone ever. Maybe it's because I don't have Derrick Henry. Because if I had Derrick Henry, then I would. But anyway, so I love picking against that Titans defense that is number one in allowing points, yards, touchdowns, and everything else to wide receivers. So I'm going to go with Mike Williams in his first healthy game back last week. It felt like it took him 4 to 6 weeks with that high ankle sprain. He went 6 for 116 and one monster game for Mike Williams, one of the top receivers on the week last week. And I think he could repeat that performance. I said before the season, I think Mike Williams is emerging as the alpha dog over there. And I think he still is. I think he's going to outscore every Charger in that offense, except for maybe Austin Eckler. In back-to-back weeks, the Titans have allowed 2 pass catchers to go over double digits on each team. Last week, it was Evan Ingram and Zay Jones. And the week before, it was Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. They've also allowed 15 fantasy points to wide receiver. 14 touchdowns to wide receivers over the past, 13 games that they've played. So averaging at least 1 touchdown per game. On top of that, Nick, you have a note here. He played 8 games, and 5 of those are over 19. It means he does have a very high ceiling, and he does hit the ceiling in this game. Nick, you had an all-boom receiver you wanted to put on this team on Tuesday, so I want you to speak of that. I think he's a guy that you've been pretty high on throughout this entire show this year and last year.
Both of us have been pretty high on him. I was higher last year.
He's one of your guys. I jumped on the
one of my
train.
guys.
He's one of your guys.
You definitely rode the train with me this year, and he has not disappointed. He's been a very solid receiver. Hasn't been dominant, but
I think I call him inconsistent. I think is fair.
Yeah, that's fair, and that whole organization has been. But it's Michael Pittman. The Vikings have given up the second most points to the wide receiver position. Last week, 3 Lions wide receivers had over double-digit points. And the Vikings allow the most points to perimeter wide receivers. He's coming off the bye, and over these last 4 games, he's averaging 8 targets per game. It's an absolute recipe for him to succeed, and I wouldn't be surprised if at 1 o'clock Minnesota decides to go up by 2-3 touchdowns, and it's just Matt Ryan having to pass the ball to Michael Pittman down that entire field. So good game script, good matchup. Everything leads to Michael Pittman succeeding in this one. And there's absolutely no reason you should bench him. I know like Nick said, he has been inconsistent this year. But there has not, I don't think that there's been a better matchup for him on the season. Most of us would say the Texans, but the Texans actually ranked like top 3 against receivers and quarterback this year, which is shocking, but it is what it is. I think Pittman's a trustable start here.
Okay. Moving on to our flex spots. My first flex play, I'm going to go with, I'll go with J.K. Dobbins here. He's facing one of Nick's favorite sports franchises in the entire world, those Cleveland Browns. The Browns need to win this game or they're eliminated from playoff contention. I have a bad feeling that they're not going to win that game. But J.K. Dobbins should have an awesome game. Browns have given up the 3rd most fantasy points to running backs throughout the entirety of the 2022 season. J.K. Dobbins last week first came back off the IR. This is the J.K. Dobbins that I think some people thought they were getting in the drafts. 120 yards, touchdown, over 15 fantasy points. Ravens are decimated, man. Backup quarterback kid who's coming off concussion. No really reliable receiver. Even Mark Andrews has been kind of shaky at best. I think they have to rely on the run here. I think they really have to rely on J.K. Dobbins. I think he sees more snaps from the running back position. I think he saw like over 30 last week, something like that. But I think he sees more of that in the second game back. So it could be a good game script for Dobbins and a good opportunity for him to score a lot of fantasy points for your teams. Who is our second flex play for week 15, first round of your divisional playoffs?
Nick put this guy on the list, but he is someone that I almost threw on the thumbnail on Tuesday. It's Chris Olave. We argued for a little bit of time that we said, Chris Olave can't be put on the all boom anymore because he's been too consistent, but he has not been a boom. He has not had those boom games. He's just had consistency. So I'm going to give you some of his consistent stats to start. Since week 1, he has no games under 5 targets, and he only has 1 game under double digits. That leads the NFL in least amount of double-digit games, or I think it's tied with Justin Jefferson or one of those superstar receivers. He just hasn't had the ceiling, but you want to know who has one of the highest ceilings for allowing wide receivers to score a lot of points? It's the Atlanta Falcons. It's been that way for 3 seasons, and this year they have allowed the 6th most points to the wide receiver position. On top of that, Chris Olave is coming off the bye. It is time for Dennis Allen and that offense to absolutely retool themselves, and typically off the bye, you go to your stars. So why would you ruin the consistency of Chris Olave? He's had multiple games with over double-digit targets on the beginning half of the year. I think he's going to come right back off the bye and go for a 10-target game, and he's going to have a monster week.
All right, there we go. Okay, our all boom tight end of the week, Broncos country. Let's ride. I think Greg Dulcich, right? Been very up and down, very boom or bust, just like just about every tight end in the league not named Travis Kelce. But here's the thing. Facing the Cardinals defense that's allowed the most fantasy points to tight ends. If you face the Cardinals, you play your tight end. Over the last 2 games, he's had 8 targets and 40 yards in each of those last 2. With Sutton likely out, he's going to be the second receiving option, whether it's Russell Wilson or another quarterback playing for Denver. On top of that, 11 tight ends that have faced the Arizona Cardinals have scored double-digit fantasy points. They played 13 games, and 11 tight ends have scored over double digits. The odds are in your favor for Greg Dulcich to maybe score a touchdown and to get you double-digit fantasy points. If you need to stream a tight end, I'm streaming him. I think he's a really good streaming option. Let's move on to our Week 15, our divisional round. Wild card round, technically. Divisional round playoff. All bust team. Who is our all bust quarterback?
We are going with someone that we said has been a monster this year. A lot of people are saying he's up for the MVP. People are saying he's a Pro Bowler. It's Tua Tagovailoa. Well, he sucked last week, and now he gets Buffalo, the 6th best team against quarterbacks on the year, and an absolute snowstorm of a game. It is going to be a disaster for Tua in that snow game. On top of that, it's not even like he comes from like one of those Michigan teams, one of those northern teams from college that gets used to the snow game. No, he's coming from Hawaii and then Alabama, one of those warmer. Some of those warmer states. Has not really had one of these snow games in his entire life. This might be one of the first times he sees snow in his entire life, honestly. Why would I expect him to succeed against one of the better defenses in the NFL? I know his matchup, for the wide receivers might be favorable because they have a lot of points to perimeter receivers, but Tua has not been as good as he was since the bye week. Over the last 3 games, he has scored under 16, and one of those includes a very favorable matchup to the Chargers, who allow the second most points to the quarterback position. So everything is pointing down for Tua and that Dolphins offense. I don't feel confident in him this week. If it was for no storm, I might feel a little more confident. But with the snow, with Tua, with the divisional matchup and all these other factors, I just think that there's other quarterbacks I'd rather throw out there.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that. All right. The all boom or bust, I should say, running backs are actually my 2 running backs in my 13-1 league, so that's a lot of fun. I'm going to start off with Josh Jacobs, who's been he's been the best running back in fantasy football for probably the last month or so. But now he's going up against the Patriots defense. He's going up against Bill Belichick, who's coaching against Josh McDaniels. This is a recipe for disaster for just about every Raider. Josh McDaniels is not going to, Bill Belichick is not going to let Josh Jacobs win this football game. He's going to try to make Derek Carr win it. Because he knows he can shut down Derek Carr, and that's the reality of it. The Patriots are the 2nd toughest defense against fantasy running backs. And Nick wrote here, we're going to learn one of 2 things: that McDaniels figured out Belichick, greatest coach of all time, or we're going to figure out if the greatest coach of all time knows how to stop his offensive coordinator. So
I meant that very sarcastically. Like, there's no freaking way that McDaniels is going to cook Belichick.
Yeah, it's not gonna be great. So you can't bench Josh Jacobs. I'm not benching him. I'm playing him in 2 leagues, but am I expecting a good game? Honestly, no. That's a real shame. All right, who is our second all bust running back for this week?
We are going with Travis Etienne. He's going up against that tough Cowboys matchup, who has been the 4th best team against the running back position. And on top of that, Etienne has slowed down tremendously since the bye week. He has 3 games under 8 fantasy points, and the game script is not going to be great for him. You might say, oh, he's going to get some good passing volume. Maybe, but he's only had 3 targets since the bye week, which was 3 weeks ago, which is 1 target per game. That is absolutely horrendous for the running back position. Game script's bad. Matchup's bad. Nothing looks good for him. The only way that he'll succeed is if the Jaguars go up early on the Cowboys. And even then, he might not be able to run past Micah Parsons. I hate the matchup. I'm more than comfortable benching him for some of the other running backs.
I don't have another option. I'm stuck. It sucks. All right. All bust receivers. The first one I'm going to go with is Amon-Ra St. Brown. Another one that is on my 13-1 fantasy team with the most points in the league by a mile. I have Stephon Diggs in the snowstorm, Josh Jacobs, Travis Etienne, and Amon-Ra St. Brown.
That is rough.
I'm going to lose. I'm set on it. Yep. No buy in this league, by the way. 8 out of 12 make the playoffs. I get no reward for my season.
What the hell?
Yeah, I'm not happy about it. But anyway, He's facing Nick's New York Jets, which is a defense I am terrified to play anybody against, especially wide receivers. Just last week, he played Stephon Diggs against them, and he had like 7 fantasy points. And Diggs has been the best wide receiver in fantasy football, by the way. He's been better than Jefferson, been better than Kupp, better than everybody. They're the 3rd toughest teams against wide receivers. Just on the season, they've allowed 30 catches for 338 yards, 1 touchdown, an average of 5.3 fantasy points, 2 wide receivers.
That's Sauce Gardner.
That's Sauce. Okay, so those are Sauce's stats. So with that said, I think Amon-Ra might get locked up. The volume is going to help him, I think, but I don't think you're getting a 20-point game here. I think you're getting closer to 10, and it's gonna screw a lot of fantasy.
I'll tell you another thing that really scares me about this game. The books just flipped the line. So now the Lions are the favorite. They're a 1-point favorite going up against the Jets in New York, which means that they're trying to bait people to take the Jets, and that means the Lions have a shot. The bookmakers are saying the Lions are going to win comfortably and run the ball.
Okay.
Which I do think will take away from Amon-Ra's volume.
All right. Who is our second all-bust wide receiver?
We are going with DeAndre Hopkins. Kyler Murray tore his ACL last week in brutal fashion, non-contact, and across the rest of the game up against the New England Patriots, who are very solid against the wide receiver position. He only scored 12.9 points with Colt McCoy. Now, that's very solid, but that is not DeAndre Hopkins. And instead of seeing the Patriots secondary, he gets the even easier matchup of Patrick Surtain shadowing him for the entire game. Patrick Surtain is probably the only receiver that's up in the Sauce Gardner, Darius Slay tier on this year. So tough matchup, backup quarterback. Like, it is brutal for DeAndre Hopkins. And it's another guy like Amon-Ra where it's like the volume might exceed it, but it's such a tough matchup where it's like it's literally the immovable force versus the unstoppable object, whatever it's called. Except you have Colt McCoy throwing to the immovable force or the unstoppable force, whatever. Tough matchup, tough break for Hopkins, and tough break for his fantasy owners.
Yep, totally agree. Moving on to the flex spots. Nick, I'm going to let you take Zonovan Knight. The other one we have here is Saquon Barkley, and I'll be honest, I did mean to text you earlier and say, hey, if you have a better option, maybe take him out. I kind of wanted to flounder on this take because I don't really love it. But I'm going to go with it. You know, we'll teeter around it that he won't have the super duper Saquon game. Christian McCaffrey just almost broke a really long touchdown, by the way. So anyway, no, he's fine. He's fine. He got like 10 yards. And it just looked he had a big hole. The Commanders are the 5th toughest team versus running backs. Saquon had a fine time they played. He had 19 fantasy points with the touchdown, with the touchdown be 13. But the Commanders are also on bye. They had 2 weeks to prepare, 2 weeks to get Chase Young healthy, and 2 weeks to find a way to shut down Saquon Barkley, who I think is clearly the focal point of that offense. I'm not scared of Daniel Jones. I'd be more scared of Saquon Barkley. His passing game usage has gone down. This is what Nick wrote here. Before the bye, only 1 game with less than 3 catches, and after the bye, only 2 games with over 3. So I think you're kind of banking on the touchdown if he's not going to get that passing game work, and I personally hope he doesn't because I actually am facing Saquon Barkley this week. Who is our other flex bust on the week, Nick? I know you really wanted to delve into this one.
Yeah, I picked a Jet. I don't like putting Jets on the all bust team, but Zonovan Knight's getting a lot of hype. He's had 3 very solid fantasy performances. I think he's averaging 15 in his first 3 starts, which is very solid. But the Detroit Lions, they used to be like the Dallas Cowboys, man. Like the Cowboys 3-4 years ago, it was like, oh, they got the Cowboys, easy, play everybody, right? Like that was the Detroit Lions. Well, I hate to tell you this, fantasy owners, but Detroit has been the number 1 team against the running back since week 8. They were ranked number 20. I think it was somewhere between 28 and 30 up until that point, and then it completely flipped. Now they're the number 8 team on the season against the running back. On top of that, since those matchups, they faced Aaron Jones, Saquon Barkley, David Montgomery, Travis Etienne, and Dalvin Cook. 5 of the top 16 running backs in football. All 5 of them scored less than 9 fantasy points in their matchup against the Lions. Typically, you see the Lions as a team that you go up early, you pound the rock, and you absolutely smoke them on the ground. Dalvin Cook had multiple 200-point games 200-yard games in his career against the Detroit Lions, and he got held to under 9. It is a miserable matchup, and now we're talking about not even the first rookie running back drafted by the team. I don't like Michael Carter in the matchup. I definitely don't like Zonovan Knight in the matchup, or Bam Knight, whatever you want to call him. It is going to be brutal for him.
Yep, I agree. And our all bust tight end, Evan Ingram, a guy that I was really high on about a month ago, and then he got back to being inconsistent. He had 3 straight games with under 5 fantasy points. And then he boomed. He had 14, and then last week I think he had over 25. Monster game last week, but he's just as inconsistent as every other tight end. He's facing the Cowboys defense. They have elapsed my New Orleans Saints and the Commanders to be the number 1 team against fantasy tight ends, allowing the lowest amount of points per game to fantasy tight ends. I think this could be a rough game for Trevor Lawrence. I think it could be a rough game for just about every Jaguar. And I'm not going to trust Evan Ingram, who's been very inconsistent. I dropped him for Greg Dulcich. That is who I'm playing this week in a league. Moving on to flex on them. 2 players from each team. 2 players from each team in the matchup, and we'll tell you which one we'd rather play in our flex spot. So, Colts at the Vikings, Paris Campbell or Adam Thielen?
I'd rather roll out Paris Campbell. Like we already said, the Vikings are terrible at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think it's gonna be rough for Adam Thielen. J.K. Dobbins or Amari Cooper?
Assuming, not assuming. I'm still rolling out J.K. Dobbins. I like the upside better. I like the floor a lot better. We saw Amari Cooper in the last 2 weeks was inconsistent with Deshaun Watson. Where J.K. Dobbins this past week rushed for like 120 yards. I think it's the better play.
Okay. I would also go with J.K. Dobbins in this one. Whoever's the running back for the Dolphins, we're assuming Raheem Mostert at this point or Devin Singletary in what could be a very snowy game.
Purely because, as you said it, who we assume is the running back for the Miami Dolphins, I'd rather roll out Singletary. I'm more comfortable in Singletary taking snaps, where I'm not as comfortable in Raheem Mostert's busted up knees.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'll take Singletary. How about Miles Sanders or David Montgomery?
I told you Miles Sanders. I'm rolling Miles Sanders.
Yeah, I'll also roll Miles Sanders in this one. Drake London or Chris Olave, who's on our all boom team.
Well, that says it all. Give me Chris Olave.
Yep, I will also take Chris Olave. DeAndre Swift or Zonovan Knight? I don't like either of these matchups, if I'm being completely honest with you here, Nick.
I wouldn't play either, but if I had to lean one way, it would be DeAndre Swift.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Okay. Najee Harris or Dante Foreman?
Let me check one stat for Najee real quick.
Sure. I'm going to go with Dante Foreman because I think he's the running back one. I don't know. I mean, you like the Panthers defense.
I do like the Panthers defense, but in every game with Mitch Trubisky as starter, what's his face? Najee Harris has gone for over double-digit fantasy points. So I do like that safe floor. I know that people have been shitting on Najee. I'm looking at the stats now. He has 3 games under 10 fantasy points, and one of them is 9.9. So
yeah,
he just hasn't a ceiling of the 5th or 6th, 7th overall pick in the draft. But he's been too consistent, honestly.
Yep, I agree with you. Let's go with Najee. Dalton Schultz or Evan Ingram?
I'm rolling out Schultz. I love Schultz's matchup. I would have considered putting him on the all boom, but
he was another one that I did consider. Play Schultz. Isaiah Pacheco or Nick's arch nemesis from 7 years ago, Rex Burkhead.
My arch nemesis is the guy on the other side of the fantasy football screen. But I am playing Rex Burkhead for my retribution. I will ride or die on Rex Burkhead in that matchup. But I would rather have
it would be so perfect if you win just because of Rex Burkhead. I wish he was playing in like the Sunday night game or something.
Dude, I was praying, but it's a 1 o'clock.
That's too
game.
bad. Hollywood Brown or Jerry Jeudy?
Give me Hollywood if he's out there.
I'm taking Jeudy. 3 touchdowns, 80 yards last week, and like 6 receptions. He's clearly the wide receiver 1. If Mr. Limited gets in there and clears concussion protocol with his nano bubbles, I think you got to put Jeudy in your lineup. Ramondre Stevenson or Damian Harris, whoever is the starter, or Josh Jacobs?
Man, that's so tough because Jacobs has been too good. I think if it's Stevenson, I'd lean Stevenson, but I mean, I can't. As good as the Patriots have been, I cannot honestly say I'd rather play Damian Harris than Josh Jacobs. So
yeah, I'm with you.
I'll be honest.
I agree. Hunter Henry. I'm sorry, that's not Hunter Henry. It's Derrick Henry or Austin Eckler. Again, the Titans do not have a flex player. They just don't. So We're going with the running backs. I'm taking Derrick Henry because the Chargers are a really bad run defense. And if you have Derrick Henry, you're going to move on your fantasy playoff to, he's going to have a big game.
I'd rather roll out Eckler because Samaje Perine or it was Joe Mixon had like 9 catches. And typically the front 7 is scary for O-line, so they check down to the running back quarterbacks often. And Herbert checks down to what's-his-face, Eckler way too often. I'm going to actually flip it here real quick, Nick.
Kittle scored a touchdown. That's great. That's good for my dynasty team. Okay, we're rolling.
I don't know if I'm against him in any league, but maybe.
We're rolling. I like that. Not good for my Seahawks, but, I like that. We can roll with that.
I'm going to ask a follow-up question since we didn't know what we'd rather roll up. Which defense would you rather play in this matchup? The Chargers, who have ranked like 30th but had a solid showing last week, or the probably 7 to 10 sacks that the Tennessee Titans will get?
I will roll out the Chargers because Ryan Tannehill sucks.
Fair enough.
I don't want to play against stat sheet stuffer Herbert over there. He might not be a winner, but he is good at stuffing the stat sheet, and that's a problem for fantasy football.
Respect.
All right. T. Higgins or Chris Godwin. I am playing Godwin in a league. I'm playing Higgins in a league that I'm definitely going to lose in, and I'm versing Godwin in a league.
Oof, this is
that was like a 20-yard touchdown or something. Kittle. That was good. I like that. I
will probably lean T. Higgins in this match.
I will also lean T. Higgins in that one.
I think we've been on the same side of the ball on all of them so far. Except Judy.
I don't know. Brady's going to throw a lot this game. I feel like it's a winner go home for the Bucs. I'm flipping it to Godwin. Godwin, I think, has a pretty good game.
Fair enough.
The last time he faced me in that dynasty league, I am facing Godwin. Yep. He had a monster game. He had his best game of the season. Darius Slayton or Terry McLaurin on Sunday Night Football in a game that I'm not disappointed that I'll be missing, honestly.
I wanted to check the stats on the last time that they matched up real quick. Slayton put up 15 points last time they faced, and Terry put up 27.5. We will roll out Terry McLaurin for the matchup.
Okay, we're rolling out Terry McLaurin. I agree with you on that one. I do like that take. Okay. Lastly, listen. There's no Ram I can even put up here. I said Baker or Rodgers. I can't think of one for this one. Higbee or Tunyon. Like, screw the segment. I don't want to play any Ram, not even Cam Akers. And for the Packers, I'll flirt with Christian Watson in my flex, and I'll play Aaron Jones. That's all.
You don't want Skoranek out there?
No, not a chance.
Not Van Jefferson?
Nope.
On the
Fantasy
long week?
Not a chance. Nope.
Yeah, I wouldn't play either. I play Christian Watson. That's about it.
There you go. All right. That is our Friday show, leading you into Week 15, leading you into your divisional round of your fantasy football playoffs. If you enjoyed it, make sure you drop a 5-star rating on iTunes or Spotify if you're listening there. If you're on YouTube, drop a like on this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel. If you didn't answer your question, if you didn't talk about a player that you need to hear talked about, come to Sunday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, our live show. Facebook, Twitter is Primetime Fantasy Podcast. YouTube is PrimeTimeFFPod. Going to be a lot of fun. We hope to answer all of your fantasy questions during that live show. Keep connecting with us on social media, Primetime FF Pod, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, and Facebook and YouTube is Primetime Fantasy Podcast. Thank you guys for listening. Best of luck in your divisional round. We hope you move on. We hope we move on. And we'll see you Sunday for the live show.